There's nothing resembling a recap of the first film, which would be fine if the characters' journeys weren't so rooted in being a continuation. Woe betide anyone who watches this first.
Do you or do you not think that Zangief flexes?
He doesn't. He's a game character. That's his programmed appearance. The character arcs have real gold to them. The bravest thing this does is recontextualize the first film's happy ending. Ralph's arc in the first film, in many ways, was about to what degree we let labels define us, given he let the fact that everyone called him a bad guy get him down all his life. Here's the thing, he's still letting something define him, his relationship to Vanellope. His problems haven't completely vanished, as now he basically lives for spending time with her. It's a surprising theme for any film, let alone a family film, presented with lots of sophistication.
For 27 years, I was a total zero without any friends.
On multiple occasions, the filmmakers retconned the events of the first film as being 27 years as opposed to 30 after Fix-It-Felix Jr. was first plugged in. Just why? What purpose does this serve? Zilch purpose, that's what. Though the film only spends 20 minutes in the arcade before going off to the internet, I like that it spreads that action across many locations. Given the characters would have naturally explored all these games, it fits that they're all home comforts by now.
And Wi-Fi is the internet.
Why does Sonic know about Wi-Fi when no one else does? Search too, for that matter. There's an interesting angle here in their dilemma on wanting and not wanting change in their lives. Ralph is a hostile NPC, as the player doesn't control him. It's a routine job, where his patterns can't change. Vanellope is a player character, so she thrives on the difference in each race. These differences could explain a lot of their motives. Except, it's basically not in the film. I don't expect a deep philosophical work, but this film does almost nothing with the questions of free will and spirituality it doesn't even seem aware just asked. Pity, given how strong the cohesion with the universe's implications the first film was. The Sugar Rush cabinet has only one screen and player seat when it was a dual cabinet before, another pointless change that serves no discernible purpose. The Candy Cart stats are still overpowered since the first film, when she outstripped everyone despite a late start. Either that, or the game lacks rubber band AI, where racing characters stay near you no matter how far ahead you get to provide challenge. It's a gosh darn miracle none of them notice Ralph peering into the screen's perimeter. This film's ignorance of the rules established before are unsettling, to put it mildly.
But the company that made Sugar Rush went out of business years ago.
Cheap way to manufacture conflict, a fictional company called Toby Comey, Nintendo-style logo and all, made the original arcade games from the first film. Not for 1 second do I believe they went bust. Could have simply said they stopped serving their arcade machines years ago. That's what every old arcade company under the sun has done.
How much? That's more than this game makes in a year.
$200 a year equates to almost 55 cents a day. No way you'd keep a machine that only gets 2 quarters daily. It wouldn't be worth the electricity and floor space it needs.
For Pete's sake, and for Peter's sake.
Serge decided a mass unplugging was a good time to try a slight variation on a common English expression. He should be glad only the audience noticed. Despite Sugar Rush being huge, everyone escaped in the seconds Litwack across the floor to the power outlet. Game characters don't move faster than real life people in this universe, so stone me how. This film's overstuffed with plot threads, so the pacing's often super quick as the film runs to get to the internet. This means very little's done with the arcade material, like the filmmakers don't even want to get more out of the wonderful world they created before.
That's the stuff that feels like life to me, and if I'm not a racer, Ralph, what am I?
I quite like this reflection scene. Not only is it the kind of soul-searching the film needs, but the comforting yet gloomy aura of Ralph's game suits it. Loses impact on a smaller screen, but such is life.
But trust me, adopting 15 children is the wrong kind of spice.
14 children. Vanellope isn't part of that. Plus, the Paylette swaps weren't there, or anywhere this film. They were often absent in the first film too, and didn't seem to escape the unplugging earlier. This adoption subplot goes unmentioned until the climax. Apparently it had scenes sprinkled through the film that were cut before animation, due to the film being so overstuffed. It's disappointing Felix and Calhoun are barely present, yeah, but this go nowhere thread is even worse. It could have been cut proper, and the only changes required would be a different transition to tappers and another way for Ralph to happen upon the eBay idea.
I will cover for you.
Despite the fact that Ralph being absent from his game kicked off the first film's stakes and was established as a big no-no, he can apparently abandon it here for more than 24 hours no problem. You could argue this works because since the arcade's attendance is clearly in decline, an old game could easily go unplayed for a day, but even with that in mind, the blatant disregard for the universe's rules is appalling. Geez, make their journey happen while Litvak's on holiday or something. At least the arcade's been progressive in giving bad guys respect, with Zangief and Blanca having portraits of tappers now too. Even though Surge can zap in and out of existence, he decides to run over to the false tip, so our heroes have time to sneak in. Litvak must have felt like a name change in his old age, because his name tag, which said Stan in the first film, says Del now. Well, he's going senile, if only installing the internet in 2018 wasn't proof enough. The arcade world building is really sloppy. Not just violating rules from before, it draws massive attention to illogical concepts the first film cleverly danced around, like when characters refuse to abide by player control. It's saddening how much this discounts what came before. How they get onto the internet may not seem arbitrary at first, but it's a notable plot contrivance if you dwell on it, even for a cartoon reality where code is basically sentient. Though the film's art direction is generic, I cannot deny its technical scope. Their arrival in the internet is a sensory feast, with only a few brand-ogling shots getting in the way. The world design of the first film was so unique and glorious. It stopped being unique to render the internet as a high-tech, sleek white city ages ago. Never mind that it's lazy to have the internet as centralized when, it conceptually isn't. I like Nose more. He gets funny gags, Alan Tudyk is as vocally versatile as ever, and his design is a cool homage to the rounded, minimalistic aesthetic used by UPA in the 50s. His eyes and glasses are even hand-drawn. He reminds me of Droopy, of all things. Apparently he was director Rich Moore's favourite new character. Good they salvaged him after he was cut from an early draft where he had a bigger part.
I only found one result for your query.
Even if that's the only steering wheel on all of eBay worldwide, itself a big suspension of disbelief, this would also mean no one has ever sold one otherwise. If you search for an eBay item on the internet, not on eBay itself, you can still find links to sold items. The first film never lingered on old video game characters in a, hey, it's that thing you recognize way. There was always something plot or character relevant going on. It's not the internet without brands, but these glory shots are overkill. An internet search for an item on eBay would take humans like you, and ghosts like me, straight to the items page. Ergo, Vanellope and Val should be dropped off the steering wheel's auction, rather than disembarking at the home page's physical equivalent. Bugger if I know why, that would save time for elsewhere. eBay is mostly where you buy things second hand, so what do they go for? A cross between a flea market, auction house, and an Apple store. That's the problem. Inside video games basically hadn't been done before the first film, but many cartoons have gone inside the internet. Minimal creativity.
The tortilla chip shaped like international superstar Beyonce Knowles goes for $400.
That low? Is this film trolling us? I'm embarrassed I know this, but a half-eaten piece of toast spat out by One Direction on Australian television went for over $100,000. People love this kind of weird stuff. It's like they're trying to get modern culture out on purpose.
15 fiver!
16!
17!
18!
Anyone who's ever bidded on eBay can tell you this cannot happen on account of the high bid limit. Bidding higher against yourself raises your max bid, but your actual winning bid remains just high enough to keep the lead. Here, that'd be $5 more. In essence, their actual bid should have remained at $3.30 unless someone bidded higher than that. Not only is this blatant ignorance of eBay's safety policies that exist for exactly this problem vexing, and clearly for artificial drama, it isn't necessary. Let's take it to $400 if the other customer bid it up a bit. $500 at a stretch. As for the expedited shipping, that can vary depending on size, weight, and time, but at worst it'd be $200 for overnight. We'll call it $700. Even if they stuck to eBay rules and they only owed that much, that'd still be plenty enough for the plot to proceed identically. Better, as it sidestepped two massive suspensions of disbelief the 27,000 figure generates.
A Litwack's family, Funland in Los Albarritos, California.
Los Albarritos? Why would they replace a real place? Spamley mentions Des Moines, Iowa later, so real places do exist here. Also, it's super lazy for Hollywood films to be physically set in LA, where they're often made. Pick the Central States or something. Most other internet celebrities' cameos here aren't obviously so, but it's clear as crystal that's wherever they got to voice her. The worst kind of inside joke, where the rest of us know we're not getting it. Plus, this kind of cameo ages horribly. So not Disney animation. Spamley is the only new character after Knowsmore that works. He seems shifty at first, but turns out to just be someone doing his job, and not a scammer at all. Gort is hilarious. The way he keeps popping up and his arms keep creepily extending is comedy gold. I saw this twice in theatres, once floating by teens and adults, the other time by kids and parents, and this was one of the few gags that got laughter from both sets.
Is $40,000 lucrative enough for you?
40 grand. Let that sink in. For lots of people, that's a year's salary. Slower Race is supposedly the most popular racing MMO, and this car has been in the game at least 31 hours, given 2 players later played that long to get to it. No matter how difficult the quest is, no way it wouldn't have been swept up yet. First massive suspension of disbelief the 27,000 figure generates, were it 700 like I suggested, and the car was for, say, a grand, then it'd be believable no one's grabbed it. Slower Race is the only interesting world building on the internet, proving that video game characters fit better dropped into other games. Even past the obvious way in which online games differ from arcade ones, there's lots of subtle detail at the margins, which fits a modern online game. The non sequitur of the shark eating the dog, for instance. Modern online sandbox games would have random traps that can kill players like that. The world building here actually holds up to scrutiny, something that cannot be said for this internet otherwise. What does not hold up is how empty this game is. The most popular online racing game should have players on every block. Given their player designed avatars, it kinda makes sense their movements and mouths are jerky here.
What's up, Pyro? I hear you, felony. And we honor yours, Butcher Boy.
These guys debating the difficulty they give the players is awkward for a few reasons, but mostly because of how Shank unsubtly name drops the others, doesn't hide how thin they are.
I just saw a really insightful TED Talk.
This is the kind of gag the writers think will get a chuckle from adults, but can't. Takes more than referencing things that exist to make it funny. The chase scene is cool. It has to stand in for a lot of Vanellope's desire to stay, but in terms of being a breath of fresh air to her stale driving life, it works. Fun, gripping, it's got the goods. If Vanellope can glitch through the fire, then why not pass this bus? There's also the physical illogic in how Shank keeps pace in the stolen vehicle in general, especially catching up right after racing through the fire. 6 vehicles box them in. Who's the NPC on one that doesn't get out?
Word. We're like family.
Not only is this said before it's shown, rather than the other way around, we're never showing a feeling of familial camaraderie between them later anyway. Showing the bad guys nice in their own way would only be the natural thing, given Vanellope's fascination with the game. Even if this game had a video making feature, the film tries to fool us that virtual characters can upload it just like a real video, and make an online account, no less. Your ghost host ain't got the words, folks. The filmmaker seems super proud to get Gal Gadot to play Shank. That'd be great if they gave her a character to play. She's just a plot device to get Vanellope to stay. She has no flaws, no goals, just hints of traits. I want to like her, but the film gives me no reason to. Takes more than a hot chick with a snazzy car. Yes, this would hold true even if I were still alive. The film to this point seemed to be building to a lot of time in Slower Race. I get the feeling they scrapped that due to not wanting to devote most of the film to a racing game again. Not the worst reason, but no one would care as long as it didn't retread the first film. The minimal setup here isn't enough alone to justify Vanellope's decision to stay. Up to now, the film's fine. Disrespectful to the first film, messy writing and pacing, and unimaginative, but the bones are solid. But once it goes to Buzztube, it turns toxic and bad for a lengthy stretch. I straight up check out for the middle fifth, and don't get reinvested until the song later. This, in a sequel to one of my favourite films, with 2 characters I hold dear to my heart. That takes a real screw up. This turns out so bad, it deserves negative karma again. Pretend Vanellope is the Disney executives and Ralph is the directors.
Alright, fine. Do it your way, but I'm telling you right now that Buzztube place is a terrible idea.
Occasionally negative karma just writes itself, folks. Shank and Yes know each other, but they never appear on screen together, and we get no idea what the relationship is like. All this does is draw attention to how disparate the Slaughter Race and Buzztube acts are. No natural flow at all. While Shank kind of had a reason to help, Yes does not. She devotes 8 hours to helping them, and it's never explained why, given she's supposed to be busy curating popular videos. No, that does not mean helping make them. It's amazing how sloppy the motivations for the new characters are.
$43,000!
I'm done. How does Ralph make a mistake like that? The only reason he's this stupid is so he can drop the 27,000 figure to give Yes context. No need, he does so once she corrects him anyway. So, getting money from videos. You don't see that day's revenue until tomorrow, you don't get the money until next month, money's much poorer the first 24 hours of videos online, and you need to hit a viewer subscriber threshold to be cleared for earning. Plus, revenue here seems to be based on likes, or hearts as it were. Yes, this isn't YouTube, but they copy once popular YouTube videos, so if they're not going to hide it, neither am I.
I'll just copy whatever's popular.
Genius!
Yes is okay with this? This scene started with her slagging on uninspired copycat videos. It does show how much Ralph loves Vanellope, willing to do all this to save her game. That'll have to stand in for character in this middle fifth. I would be here for hours, nay, days, if I highlighted every problem with the Ralph becoming a viral star angle, but first and foremost, you basically cannot control whether something goes viral, even if you have a huge fanbase already, which Ralph does not. Second, it breaks a basic principle of entertainment. You never have characters laugh unironically at something the audience won't find funny, yet crowds of people treat these videos, pale imitations in-universe and to us, like they're the best thing since sliced bread. The videos themselves aren't totally brainless. Cooking and makeup tutorials will always be a thing, but when you're copying once popular memes like the screaming goat and the floss dance, where's my ghost plasma puke bucket? Referencing things we know, where us knowing is why we're supposed to laugh. In the right context, this works. But Disney animation? Films we're supposed to treasure and which will be watched decades from now? The film's only 5 months old and it's already aging embarrassingly. Even apart from how many videos are getting made in 8 hours, how are they already being covered on TV within the first chunk of that 8-hour window? Lastly, let's just recap. $27,000 in 8 hours by internet videos. This is going to kill me again. We're at that $700 figure I mentioned. It'd be plausible enough to suspend disbelief.
We've been baking at about 950 degrees now for 6 hours.
No, you haven't. Yes says they have 5 hours to go mere moments later. That's under 3 hours so far, minus the time taken to make all those other videos. The only thing about this plotline that clicks is the montage music, a mix of the Ralph theme from the first movie with the internet's more modern electronica. It's great if you can separate it from the sludge it accompanies.
Okay, I'll redirect our newest pop-up to ohmydisney.com.
Vanellope going to a Disney website starts on a bad foot when they have the goal to name drop the company, rather than just being a logo like every other brand. In the right context, the sequence could work. A standalone short, maybe visiting Disneyland. Jammed into this film is not that context. All the Disney references waving at the camera rather than being subtle Easter eggs is one thing. It's infinitely worsened by the jokes being of the Disney owns everything you love type. The dominating takeaway of this sequence is that, yes, Disney owns lots of properties, and we're watching one. How are we supposed to ignore their corporate side when the film itself, the thing supposed to enchant us in movie magic, is shouting that every 5 seconds? Amusing that the artists try to make this Disney fair to other properties. Seems here the Muppets and Good Dinosaur weren't thrown under the bus. How about that? I adore Dumbo. It's my personal favourite from Disney's golden age of their first 5 films. But given the live action remake's trailer was in front of this at the cinema, and it's out just after this is on home media, corporate promotion much? I could maybe stomach this were the highlighted Disney stuff all animation things, at least then it's all one studio, but Marvel and Star Wars now? I'm gonna need a second Ghost Plasma puke bucket. This princess stuff worked in the trailers, with its quick editing, when the trailer stops right after and it's fresh in our minds. Not here, when by the time the film finishes 40 minutes later, it's long gone. It's good the Disney segment is only 6 minutes, but that means it moves so fast you can barely even appreciate the parts you like. Also means, with 14 princesses, several don't even get one notable moment, and most just one. Even now, I can't remember if Aurora, Belle, Pocahontas, Mulan, or Anna did anything specific to them. Yes, the writers did their homework with all the lore callbacks in this segment. Boo-hoo, so have most of us, in our free time, and we don't own the things the homework was done on. That research on past films should have been confined to Ralph's first film. Maybe then we'd avoid this being so unfaithful to its concepts and rules.
Were you poisoned? No. Cursed? No. Kidnapped or enslaved? No.
Well, she was kinda cursed, kind of kidnapped or enslaved. Not sure which category King Candy's borderline gaslighting of her falls into, but it's elements of all three. The film can't even acknowledge her roots. As regards the princess's CG designs, some work. Ariel turned out great. Most are iffy, but passable. Some look like Hellspawn. The biggest offender is the downgrades to the princesses that were in CG films to begin with. How do you change Rapunzel from that to that? Especially when Merida looks fine. You could defend the changes by pointing out that these aren't the actual princesses, just online avatars with their backstories programmed in. Fair, but nope. Disney's Hyperion software that they've used since Big Hero 6 continues to have weird skin texture and design issues.
Sometimes your song can't start until you go someplace to reflect.
What works for some of us is finding a form of water and staring at it.
Like most people, I never noticed that many I Want songs start with staring into water. If the trope lampshading was all unnoticed things like this, that'd be great.
Ach, lang me your lumrieke me a moose nearly your gun away a teardrop in his eye. Hey, she back me, lassie.
The trailer line irritated Scots enough, and that was comprehensible. I had to look this up. They pushed for as thick an accent as possible. The subtitles even just say it's gibberish. Surprised people haven't kicked up a huge fuss over this. They're in the internet. They should not be having connection issues. Cheap way to get Ralph to wander into the comments section. So how does this work in real life? Do the people those avatars represent just automatically go to that page? This film's conceptual logic bursts easier than a balloon against a toothpick. When Ralph rotates the display, his putrid goat video goes from 130 million views to 302 million. Whatever animator did that does not get the concept of continuity, or something that doesn't lower my faith in humanity. Showing Ralph's old insecurities emerging again by him reading the comments is one of the actual clever uses of the internet. He's had 6 years away from this treatment, and then it all comes racing back. It's Disney, so it can't go into true internet toxicity, but this actually feels earned. However, it cheapens his arc. Not just the way it's brushed aside, but even the way this moment is delivered. It's impossible to tell how seriously we're supposed to take it. Yes, it's setting up points for later, but they basically fail to register. Just to rub in how ridiculous the 27,000 figure is, they go for 3 additional grand.
No song for this princess, I guess.
Though Vanellope reinstated herself as a president last film, she only refers to herself as a princess here. Maybe something happened during those 6 years. Too bad we don't get to hear about it. The thing that finally gets me invested again is the Slaughter Race song. It may be the strongest individual component, certainly the most fun, self-aware, but also sincere and a good example of the musical numbers it's parodying. Helps that Disney's 90s musical writer Alan Menken returns for the song. He brings his usual strengths of beautifully rendered melodies complete with flighty orchestrations and choral crescendos. It's the instrumental ending notes that seal it for me. But here's the kick. Like Let It Go, it's rather irrelevant to the story or characters. This song has to handle the whole turning point of Vanellope's character arc, and like a lot in this film, it can't handle that. Much more so if the song doesn't do it for you.
Here's something I wish I'd learned years ago.
Pity we have no idea under what circumstances she learnt it. It's a stab at something in her past, but so puny it reads as screenwriting 101 for dummies. The film feels like it was setting Shank up as a twist villain. She's presented as everything Vanellope idealizes, heaping praise upon her. Yes, she talked about keeping the player challenge up. Then the song presents Slaughter Race as an ideal paradise rather than the dirty, gritty game it is, because she played to Vanellope's emotions. Finally, Shank affirms that Vanellope has to make her own choice. But she omits the lesson from the first film, that game abandonment, that going turbo, is treason in this universe. This reads like her manipulating Vanellope for her own reasons, probably to use Vanellope's glitch as a higher challenge. This screams twist villain. What is done with this? Absolutely nothing. Shank has no character and twist villains are well overplayed, but all that setup amounts to peanuts because there isn't nearly enough positive shown to justify Vanellope's staying. I'd take predictability over go nowhere writing.
No, she's been brainwashed, because the Vanellope I know would never abandon me like that.
Replace brainwashed with poorly written and you'll be bang on the money, Ralph. Because it's Disney, they can't get into proper dark internet stuff. Between that and the film's unimaginative design, the darknet ends up as just any seedy alley you'd get for illegal underground activity, leaves not a whisper of an impression.
The reason I came to your neck of the face, I mean, there's a face in your neck. I mean, woods, neck of the woods. Oh, well, I heard a little rumor. Goitering. Gah, got it. Thank you, your assist face. Ow, I mean, assistance. Thank you for your assist face. Assistance.
The constant slip-ups the characters make regarding Double Dan's neck gland is funny. Not only is Double Dan a character who appears for a single scene to speed the plot along, another lazy screenwriting shortcut, his motivations are very unclear. It seems he's using Ralph to spread a virus, but his caution about keeping it contained contradicts that. Since he's never seen or mentioned again, he's just another plot device, despite solid voice acting.
You didn't tell Ralph yet, did you?
Of all the out-of-character things in the film, and there's a lot, Vanellope abandoning Ralph without even leaving a message takes the cake. Does she think he's still waiting for her outside eBay? No amount of her being upset at how I react excuses that. We could buy Kubert and those other 80s characters inserting themselves into Fix-a-Felix Jr. last film, because that was just one arcade machine. Not nearly enough people would play it to get suspicious. But a 90s arcade racing character in an online racing game played by millions? Vanellope and Shank have to know this would cause worldwide chaos. Vanellope is chosen super frequently back home nowadays. If she permanently disappears from her game's roster, there's no way attendance won't drop even more and Litwack will retire it. Not as immediately as with Ralph's game, but right now, the game needs Vanellope to function. The complaints people have of her going turbo have merit.
Please, I'm one of 16 racers. They'd never miss me.
Thank goodness this line is in here. It helps to give legitimate reason to her choice. Not enough though. Vanellope needed to have also said something like, "They didn't miss me when I was a glitch, why would they miss me now?" referring to both the other racers and the players. That little hint that her years alone affected her, despite doing her best to bury it, would have cleared up many motivational holes. Even if it's not PTSD level, exile like that leaves scars. The pieces are all there. Yet as far as this film is concerned, the specifics of Vanellope's life before she met Ralph doesn't matter. And again, numbers 1 too high. One of 15 racers. After the virus copies Ralph, it just vanishes from the film, not even a sideways hint at what became of it. Guess it's still out there replicating defects the internet over. Does being a ghost count as insecurity? I'm just gonna go. The last fifth is legitimately great. It's rooted in character, has no dated humour, sticks to its arcs, has clever writing, honest raw emotion, and many of the first film's strengths this one barely has otherwise. Having no external villain, just an internal one personified externally, really works for this film's character arcs. Given Disney's recent addiction to middling twist villains, I'll take it. The way the clone's movement is akin to Ralph's in his game, climbing and running on all fours, is great too. The character's game roots show in unusual ways in the climax. Even if there's a ceiling hatch for them to escape, how do they hold the fort long enough for Yes to come get them?
Guess I forgot to tell Ralph that when you break the internet, you don't literally have to break the internet.
Remember the awkward title joke from the trailer?
Shouldn't it be Ralph wrecks the internet?
Yeah, since he is Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah, but break the internet, it's like a thing.
Right, it's just wreck the internet kind of sounds better, doesn't it?
You're not wrong.
That was thankfully removed, yet they didn't rewrite this line that calls back to it. Complete lack of context as a result. While Pinterest, Wikipedia, Outlook and Google are all present for the climax, they're just backdrops, not dwelled on, and have some minor clever conceits. Oh, if only more of the internet branding was like this. The Ralphzilla thing is great horror film stuff. Despite being Disney, it's properly psychologically unsettling, seeing a character we love as a monster, and all the layers of insecurities that factor into everything going on here. Notice him reflecting the violent nature of Ralph's roots, climbing a building, because that's his old role. This kind of layering for adults is far more effective, daring, and impactful than any of the dated gags. And the way it's animated, how all the Ralphs are jumbled up in a coherent way, but you can still make out what they're individually doing, this maps the technical expertise throughout with design creativity that's been lacking otherwise, to say the least. At least it's here. Vanellope could have glitched herself in Yes down. If she can do it with Ralph in a cart, she can do it with a physical algorithm.
It's not right to hold a friend back from her dreams. You don't own her. That's not how friendship works. You're gonna be okay, and we're gonna be okay.
Of course we are, always.
She's always gonna be our friend, and we just gotta trust her, because that's what best friends do.
You might expect them to still defeat Ralphzilla using the antivirus gate, but it's actually far more fitting to Ralph's arc and the villain in the story for Ralph to have to be upfront about his insecurities and learning to live without Vanellope always being around. Though there is some stiff over-literalization in his plea speech. The clones dissolving in a beautiful yellow glow is mesmerizing, even apart from the pixelated feel they have, calling back to the 8-bit roots. This is the kind of visual impact cinematic animation is made for. The yellow cubes that Ralph was wedged between vanish mere shots into his freefall.
Your old pal JT's family's got you.
This is another gag that gets a laugh no matter who I watch this with. Just hilariously unexpected and sudden. Spamney and Gort do provide some of the sparse comedy that actually works. The princesses are back, for no reason other than the earlier sequence killed it at D23, so this was added late in the process. More clever homages, but it's a notable blemish on the stellar final fifth, having no real connection to what happens around it. Though Ralph still has his clothes on when he landed in the dress, his belly's exposed when he rips it.
you know, Shank added my code and everything, so I'll be able to regenerate.
The writers think this butt pull will actually fly with us. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Game characters being able to upload videos is one thing, but add foreign code to an online game and not have humans and ghosts notice? Yeah, no.
I love you so much.
Not gonna lie, this scene still tears me up quite a bit. That's how much these characters mean to me, and this denouement captures that beautifully. Clever how we don't see Vanellope vanishing, instead being obstructed by a passing vehicle, makes her and Ralph's party more visually stark, hammering home that they really are going their separate ways. The nearly 30 seconds of silence as Ralph contemplates and starts to leave afterwards, it's just as effective as similar moments of silence in the first film. A lot more of this was needed, hanging on his sad look before a smile pokes back in. This finale very clearly echoes the first film's arcade finale, to the point of basically identical music. In many respects, this works, having fun gags and establishing Ralph starting to define himself by more than his relationship to another person. Yet it also has some of the clunkiness from the opening fifth, mostly in part to not being as connected to the film as the first film's finale was. It doesn't help that after 75 minutes away from the arcade, it has to shoulder the weight of, oh yeah, that's where they started. Something about the mood of this closing scene really works, bookending their opening bit nicely, just re-establishing that their friendship is as strong as ever, even separated. I've always been a sucker for this kind of hologram communication, where they seem otherworldly, almost ghost-like. Why? Oh, I bet you can guess. It would have been better had it finished on a fade out of Ralph. At least then we'd leave feeling like the character arcs were in focus all film. While its backwards pan, echoing the start, is fair, the mood it generates when paired with the credits song's instrumental start ruins the atmosphere. The filmmakers had to keep the teaser trailer scene as a mid-credit scene, as by the time it was cut from the film, merch of the bunny and kitty was already in the can. They had to be in the film, but that doesn't excuse how, even apart from the awkward lampshading of the scene getting the sack, it's not nearly as funny in context.
There was a scene in the trailer that wasn't in the movie, and that makes me sad.
Plus, as soon as people forget that teaser, if they haven't already, this will be hideously dated, to say nothing of people and ghosts who never saw this teaser to begin with. The scrolling webpage thing, is there an official term for those? Representing the credits scrolling progress is neat. It even scrolls back to the middle once the rest of the credits, the part past the second song, loads. Also neat.
Click here.
Ugh, Rickrolling has survived well enough, but this is still embarrassing. I was amused first time, and I've cringed ever since. I might forgive it if it was a special feature, but this is physically part of the movie. How awkward is it going to look in a decade? What happened? I'll admit, the first film's not perfect, but its flaws are easy to brush aside. The opposite is true here. There's a daring character story here, in their friendship specifics and how it's unhealthy in many ways. It might not be what we expected, but it has logic and adds naturally to the first film's ending and honors its intent. Yet it almost completely fails to make an impact, with all the noise going on around it. It only registers for me because of how much I love these characters, enough that I was charitable on first viewing. There's rumours this film had good dinosaur level production issues that Disney kept under wraps, and I believe it. Even forgetting the dated humour and Disney in-jokes, the screenplay's a malnourished heap of underdeveloped concept, plot points and character arcs. This merits triple negative karma, it's that messy. Then there's the ridiculous number of plot contrivances. Like with the illogical train wreck of world building, they draw attention to it in the worst possible way. Sugar Rush breaking on the day Wi-Fi's installed, finding the auction as it ends, Ralph sending Vanellope to Oh My Disney of all places, and more. The worst the original film has was Ralph barreling into Sugar Rush of all the arcade games, and at a 1 in 24 chance. That's believable. The ticking clock's another annoyance. The initial Slaughter Race escapade took nearly 16 hours, and then all the viral star sludge took 8. The clock has no dramatic urgency at all. Okay, the clock till Ralph's game got unplugged or the Cybugs took over Sugar Rush last film wasn't that intense, but it did the job and wasn't this poorly conceived. And the film forgets it was even a thing once they paid for the wheel. This film is basically 5 20-minute acts. Act 1's the arcade setup, Act 2's the early eBay shenanigans and Slaughter Race mission, Act 3's the Buzztube and Oh My Disney parts, Act 4's further development in Slaughter Race and the virus being unleashed, Act 5's the Ralphzilla battle and the ending. Of these, Act 5 is great, Act 1 and 2 are sloppy but serviceable, Act 4 is really wobbly with character decisions and motivations but does have that song, and Act 3 is pure garbage. It gives me no pleasure to say this, but that leaves the overall film a jumbled mess. This isn't terrible. Some sections are fun, the dated internet humor and Disney narcissism are mostly confined to the middle fifth, and despite some very questionable things they do, the two leads are still very lovable and deep. All in all, this is either the weakest Disney film since Meet the Robinsons, nearly 12 years prior, depending on how that holds up, or since Chicken Little. Even if everything since Robinsons has been at least good, for this to be halfway between decent and weak, let's just say I'm glad ghosts can't die from disappointment. -69! Ralph breaks the internet? More like Disney breaks my interest in future animated sequels from them.